Hello and welcome to the OP Overwatch Podcast. I'm your host Jam and I'm joined by my co-host Jeff. How you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, man? I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good. Really excited for this episode because we're going to talk about two of some of the most popular characters in Overwatch, and they're very important to the lore and very, very fun to play gameplay-wise. So let's not waste any time and open it right up with Soldier 76.
I didn't start this war, but I'm damn well gonna finish it.
So Soldier 76, I consider to be, lore-wise, almost the head of Overwatch, the leader. Or at least he was. He is actually the character Jack Morrison, who was one of the initial leaders of Overwatch back in their heyday, about 30 years prior. And he disappeared for a little while in the story, supposedly died after a fight with Reyes, a.k.a. Reaper. And then all of a sudden, this new hero called Soldier 76 appears, masked hero who fights exactly like Jack Morrison with a brand new rifle that he is using, stolen technology, the heavy pulse rifle. And this guy is just a great character. I mean, he is a representation of shooters all across the board.
Yeah, and I don't think I've made any secret early on that I wasn't a huge fan of him, but I've probably been playing Soldier more than any other character over the past several weeks. So it's safe to say I've done a 180 on that. I think we just got off to a bad start because we're both kind of grumpy old men. But it's working out now. He's absolutely one of my favorite characters. He's pretty viable in all situations, I think. Very, very balanced. So I have become a big fan. So I'm excited to dive into this now that I've had a good amount of time on him.
Do you think that Soldier 76 might be your spirit animal with that grumpy old man type of persona?
That's fair to say. I really like a lot of his voice lines. I hear a lot of grumpy Clint Eastwood lines in there, so...
Well, Soldier 76 is he's a vigilante. He fights, like I mentioned before, with a heavy pulse rifle, which you can imagine is just your standard machine gun, but a little more powerful. He has a base HP of 200, so, you know, it's not really high up there, but for an attack character, it's pretty run-of-the-mill. I think he's probably one of the most balanced characters in Overwatch, simply because of the myriad of abilities that he has and how well they complement each other. So let's go ahead and just start with his passive ability before we get into any weapons at all. His passive ability is his sprint. The sprint is exactly what it sounds like. It's an ability that allows him to suddenly start sprinting and running way faster than he normally does. And this ability is so useful and simple on the face, but when you're actually applying it, as you would in almost any FPS, but especially in Overwatch, it really, really comes in handy.
Yeah, the sprint is really good for a number of situations. For one thing, when you die, he's the second fastest character in the game at getting back into the fight, behind only Tracer. So that sprint is pretty quick, but it also makes him really good at engaging and disengaging. He can get around to flanks, or if a fight's going south, he can turn and get away and get to a health pack or regroup with the team. So it really gives him more mobility, and it's just straightforward mobility, not like a Genji or Tracer where they're jumping all over the place. You can't fire when he's sprinting, so you can't really use it in combat, but just in terms of getting out of combat or getting back to the fight, it's awesome.
And it's really important, as you mentioned, to remember to be able to use it in both evasive and offensive maneuvers. A lot of people will just jump in and they'll use sprint to get back in the battle and then immediately forget about it. But that extra boost of speed can really get you out of situations really, really quickly. And not only that, but you can, not only flank, but you can literally, with the speed, flank from the front, similar with Tracer as well. Just push right past their line and then get behind them and do a reverse flank right from the front. So being able to use that to your advantage is hugely, hugely helpful, because that movement speed and mobility, as we know in Overwatch, is extremely important. So using the sprinting in tandem with your main weapon is really the key with Soldier 76, and his main weapon is his heavy pulse rifle. Now, the heavy pulse rifle is a rifle that has 25 ammo. It shoots about 10 rounds per second, and it does 5 to 17 damage depending on fall off. So it's a really powerful weapon that has ongoing shots, and it only takes a second to reload. And headshots do count with it as well, so you really want to be aiming for that head when you shoot with it. But it's a solid weapon, and it's what you'd expect from your standard military soldier type character.
Yeah, the pulse rifle is really cool. It's a hit scan weapon, so similar to McCree or Widowmaker, it's just point and click. There's no travel time. And it's interesting because it's a fully automatic weapon, so like for close combat, you can just hold it down and spray at people. But if you're trying to get people at medium or long range, it sometimes is better to fire in bursts. You can actually fire up to 4 shots without any spread. So after the 4th shot, if you hold it down further, you'll start to become less and less accurate with your shots. But if you fire in 4-round bursts, they're always going to be pinpoint to exactly where you're firing, no matter how far away it is. So it's a pretty cool little tactic to practice that you can really exchange fire from even max range and be perfectly accurate for those 4 shots in a row and just let off the fire and then 4 shots again and continue.
Yeah, that burst fire, as it's called, is pretty prominent in a lot of modern and classic FPSs. It's pretty normal. If you're, not a huge FPS player, it's going to be very attractive to just hold down the fire button and let everything just, let your entire clip run out into an enemy. But kind of peppering in those pulse shots with extra accuracy, that's just going to be that little bit of extra damage that could win you the fight because more of those shots are actually landing where you're pointing. So it's important to be able to do that. The alternate fire on the pulse rifle are the helix rockets. So in the very same weapon that you're shooting, your standard automatic ammunition, you also have an alternate rocket launcher, which is awesome. I mean, it's such a cool weapon on top of that. So the helix rockets are a strong weapon that do 120 damage when hit directly, and it goes up to 80 splash damage if it's, hits around the area of a character. So it is a really strong weapon, but you can hurt yourself with it as well. So you got to be careful if you're using it at close range not to hit it too close to where you're standing. A lot of the times you get stuck in a hallway or you're shooting it at the ground. But it's extremely good alternate fire, and you only have to wait 8 seconds before you have to use it again. Yeah,
it feels the same as like a Farah rocket in terms of like the damage that it puts out, but it does travel a little bit faster than hers, I think. The 8-second cooldown is pretty short, so you want to use this often. And I find it's really great for especially stationary targets like a Bastion or Torbjorn turrets, where you can just pop out and fire them and do a large amount of burst damage. It's also going to allow you to take tanks down faster. And I also like to aim it at the ground sometimes, like if I'm trying to hit a Tracer or a Reaper, someone rushing me up close. Instead of gambling on the direct shot where you might miss and do nothing, you can usually hit the ground, do 80 damage to them, and then finish them off with the pulse rifle main fire.
Yeah, really mixing up those abilities and watching your cooldown for that in tandem with your sprint ability gives Soldier a lot of flexibility as a character. I mean, you can, bust in really quickly, do some damage, pop off some helix missiles, and then get out of there, before anybody even realized what happened. So right off the bat, it's very clear that Soldier is a solid attack character because he has so many great options for doing attacks. But it doesn't stop there. His next ability is extremely useful. It's the biotic field. So the biotic field is this sort of scientific emitter that he throws down on the ground, and once he throws it down, it actually creates an area of effect heal that affects him and teammates as well. It has a duration of about 5 seconds, which is a solid amount of time to get a heal up, especially for an attack character, and only has a cooldown of about 15 seconds, so you can use it pretty often throughout a fight, and a good Soldier 76 player will do that pretty often as well, especially when you're at a pinch and you're taking a decent amount of damage from the opposing team.
Yeah, the biotic field feels a little stronger than is appropriate sometimes because it can heal your whole team. So it's phenomenal to use on like control points during a big conflict, or you can drop it by or on a payload And if you put it on top of the payload, it'll actually move with the payload for the 5 seconds that it's up, which is just kind of funny. It can't help. But just overall, I mean, it's so effective to have an attack character that can help out as a healer in a crunch. Or if you're just out on your own one-on-one, you can drop it, and it'll almost always help you win that one-on-one battle if you're dancing around, strafing around inside the biotic field, because you're pretty close to full health the whole time that's up.
Yes, having someone that can do a massive amount of damage over a short amount of time and create a ongoing heal over a few seconds is pretty frustrating to fight, especially when you're playing characters that don't do as much damage as he does. So, like you said, in a one-on-one fight, it's almost like you're doing nothing while you're shooting directly at him, and he is just mowing you down with the pulse rifle. So, yeah, he's a pretty solid character and very balanced. He's got speed, he's got strength. Exactly what you'd expect from someone who went through the quote-unquote soldier enhancement program. Sounds a lot like a Marvel superhero I've heard about in the past. But, yeah, it's very clear that Soldier is in it to win it, and he has a lot of strengths. So when talking about strategy now, how do you usually play Soldier as far as surveying who's on the map? What type of characters are you generally hunting down? Who are you trying to avoid? And what are you doing positioning-wise? Because he's really, really about taking cover, especially when using that sprint ability.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned he's in the attack grouping, but, I mean, he's so balanced. I see him played more on defense, or certainly equally on defense. So there's really never a situation where it's terrible to play Soldier. And, I mean, as far as who he's strong against, it's a big list. He's pretty balanced, so he can really compete with everybody. I mean, if I had to put some names to it, I would say Farah. He's definitely effective for. The healers are going to have a hard time withstanding the damage that he could put out. And then I guess the stationary targets, I mentioned Bastion and Torbjorn, are just sitting ducks for the Helix rockets. But, I mean, really, it's harder to come up with a list that he's weak against. I mean, I guess I would say, like, Reinhardt, just because if he has his shield up, it can minimize a lot of Soldier's damage, but then it just feels like Soldier's going to break his shield pretty quickly. Zarya, kind of daring Soldier to hit her, you know. Zarya gets stronger and stronger as you do damage, so just because of that, she can capitalize off of a trigger-happy Soldier. And then maybe, like, Winston, just because he can jump right on you and engage and kind of get you off your game a little bit. He's kind of more of a disruptor, but he's got more health than you're comfortable with being right in your face. So I would say those are probably the characters that give me the most trouble with him. I mean, I don't know. How's your experience been with him? Would you agree with that assessment?
Well, yeah, I'd agree with it all. I don't know. The tricky thing about Soldier, like you said, he is really balanced. So it's hard to... You know, I go through the list of the remaining 20 characters in the game, and man, I just feel like if you're playing Soldier correctly, you can pretty much counter almost any of them. You know, if you have a tank, you can mow down their health with your combination of weapons. If you're fighting a support character, they usually don't have a lot of health, and you can chase them down with the sprint. Someone like Lucio or Mercy that are able to get away from you pretty quickly with their abilities. And then if you're fighting a sniper, I mean, you have that Helix rocket, which is, you know, it's a shot in the dark, but if you're timing it right and you have a decent aim and can really plan it out well, you could essentially scare off a sniper with that as well. So he's really good against most characters. I think the biggest thing is just avoiding characters that can lay on the damage on you, like Bastion, over a short amount of time really, really quickly. You know, if you're fighting someone like Reinhardt, you don't want to get too close to him. Soldier, you want to be close to get your maximum damage without the fall off, but you also don't want to be too close as you're going to fall easily to someone like Reinhardt or Roadhog or even Reaper. You know, and that's where that sprint comes in. Once again, he's not completely helpless because he's able to get away if you're using his sprint. But his, you know, even with all those abilities, we haven't even talked about his ultimate yet. And his ultimate is great. It's actually almost sort of an inside joke from Blizzard. I'll explain that in a bit. So his ultimate is the Tactical Visor. So the Tactical Visor is this projection that goes in front of him that comes out of the visor that Soldier 76 wears. And what happens when he puts that on, for a duration of 6 seconds, it actually auto-aims and locks onto the targets directly in your line of sight. And all you have to do is hold down that firing button, and whoever's in front of you, it'll start shooting at them automatically without the reticle even having to be directly on them. This is what's traditionally known in the FPS community as an aimbot. It's a way that people used to cheat in, your old Counter-Strike and other FPSs from back in the day. It was something they used to install to kind of just auto-aim so you could win matches easily without even having to aim right at the person. And Blizzard, being big fans of your classic FPSs, they put this in as an ability to kind of complement the traditional FPS character style. But it's an ultimate. So, instead of being cheating, it's actually a badass ability that Soldier gets to dish out once his ultimate's fully charged.
I have no knowledge of this aimbot that you're talking about.
I'm sure you don't.
Yeah, the tactical visor is really cool. It's a very effective ultimate. I would probably categorize it as a high floor, low ceiling ultimate. And what I mean by that is it's very consistent. You won't have the dramatic misses, but it's not one of the all or nothing ultimates like you see Reaper or Pharah that will ult and kill a whole team. And the tactical visor is probably not going to do that. I mean, I don't think it actually puts out enough damage with the bullets you can fire in the amount of time to kill a whole team. But it is something that it's not like you fire it and you missed. It's up for a few seconds and you can run around corners with it at full speed and engage. So you can kind of be sure that you're going to get one or probably two people with it, but probably not 4 or 5 or 6. So I really like it. I mean, it's definitely one that I'm using it almost all the time as soon as it's up, just because it's just adding to your kill streak. Again, you're not waiting for some big play of the game necessarily. So one thing about it, it will aim the Helix rocket too, not just your primary fire, but it won't lead a moving target. So if you're going to use the Helix rocket during the visor, try to aim at a stationary target or someone who's running like right at you or right away from you in a straight line, so that way you can be sure that the rocket's going to land. It won't auto-aim your regular fire at constructed targets like Torbjorn turrets, teleporters, traps, things like that. So just be aware if there's a turret shooting you, you're going to have to deal with it ahead of time or stay out of line of sight of it. And then the last thing, like I said, it's probably not going to get the whole team, so it's important to prioritize who you're actually aiming at. You obviously want to start with healers, and then the faster characters, the ones that are just harder to take down in general, like Tracer or Genji, are who I usually go to after the healers.
Yeah, those are definitely some good tips. A few other mechanics to be aware of. First off is visually. Now, when you're setting off the tactical visor, you're going to see a circle around your reticle, a nice wide circle that's usually in blue. You have to keep enemies within this circle to actually auto-aim at them. So it's not the completely wide everything you see. You do have to do a little bit of aiming, but it's an extremely wide circle. So make sure that your selected target is within that circle. And then you'll actually see kind of a lock-on signal on them. It'll show who they're attacking. Also, it does only attacks one enemy at a time, and you'll notice that with the visual. So just be aware of that, and it's going to generally attack the closer enemies. So that's important to know. Also, and this is really subtle, but also very important, especially in a quick twitch type character, it also decreases your load time from 1 second to half a second, or your reload time, rather. So you're going to reload faster, you're going to do a lot of damage, you're going to auto-aim. So it's all around, once again, just like the character, a really balanced ultimate. Not completely overpowered, and it still requires a little bit of skill and strategy. I would recommend, just as anything, getting to a position where you're not just standing in front of all 6 or 5 characters in front of you and getting hit. You want to kind of get yourself to maybe a good vantage point, use it as a flanking tool, or even as a last-ditch effort to kind of get people off the point if you're the only one there. So Tactical Visor is a pretty solid ultimate, and also, going back to that sound design that I love so much, listen out for it. When Soldier 76 activates a Tactical Visor, he actually will yell out, "I got you in my sights." And when you hear that and you hear the terrifying pulse rifle sound charging up, you want to get to cover. And just like McCree's High Noon, you're going to want to know where he is first before you start hiding. So just be super aware of that, both visually and through audio. And if you're playing a soldier, don't use it lightly. Make sure that you're planning right and that you're kind of planning to attack the characters that are going to be most effective to kill first. So that way, once it's finished, you can continue attacking with your regular weapon and finish the job.
So, as you mentioned, he yells out, "I've got you in my sights," and similar to McCree, it's kind of this big announcement where you're going to be a target. I mean, he doesn't glow red like McCree and have a tumbleweed come out in front of him. It's not quite that obnoxious, but you're going to be a target. So one thing I really like to do is to drop your biotic field before you pop the ult. And that way, at least for 5 seconds, you're going to be getting healed. So you're auto-aiming at people, and when they're returning fire, you're also getting healed. Because you still only have 200 health, and just like most other characters' ultimates, it doesn't make you invulnerable. So you can't just pop tactical visor and run around a corner at all 6 of them and just, you're going to probably take one with you if you're lucky at that point. But the biotic field seems to help a lot. So I definitely would advise, not just with the ultimate, really. I like to drop that in all situations before engaging, but especially in that one.
Absolutely agreed on that for sure. So as far as Soldier 76 goes, are there any other strategies that you think just using his abilities, maybe some cool tips and tricks, maybe map-specific even, that you like to use with him?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, he's being so balanced, you can really play him however you want. So I see a lot of people play Soldier and move with the payload and stay behind Reinhardt's shield and exchange fire with the other team, and he's as good as anyone else at doing that. But I find myself kind of playing him more as a hybrid flanker because the sprint can be so effective. So I really like to move forward until I start engaging and then hop back behind the payload or behind a corner so they'll think I'm reloading and actually be sprinting off around the side of the map. That's a good way to get the jump on them. If you've got your ult up, it's a great time to use the visor. But even if you don't, just a way to kind of pin them in, force them to take fire from multiple sides. And the sprint, it has the speed to get you there. So I really like to play him almost as a flanker at times. But he can fill whatever role you need, which is great. As far as tips, one thing I noticed right off the bat, he's got a character-specific option for health meters similar to Zarya. So I think it's pretty useful information to have, especially since he can heal allies. Just because you're at full health, that doesn't mean other people might not be hurting. So it's good to know if you need to drop one on a payload or something to help some people get topped off really quick. Another thing, the biotic field is an actual projectile. I don't think a lot of people realize that right off the bat, but what that means is that, in theory, it can be deflected by Genji, because everything can. So if there's a Genji in your face, be careful, because you might end up healing the other team with a biotic field if he is able to deflect it. It doesn't go very far, obviously, so he would have to be right on you, but it does go out slightly in front of you, and that's good to know because if you're in an elevated position and there's some fighting going on below you, you can walk to the edge and drop the biotic field, and it will drop to the ground below you, heal your allies, and you don't have to give up your elevated position. So that's not something that's going to happen every game, but it's good to know. The one that comes to mind, I guess, would probably be the first checkpoint at Gibraltar where the payload goes down under the tunnel. You could throw a biotic field down to the lower level and stay up top. So that's a neat little trick. Another one that I noticed, the Helix rockets can propel you if you shoot it at the ground. It'll do a little bit of damage to you, but you can use it to reach some of the harder places or higher places in the map, or to make a few jumps that Soldier can't make without it. I've seen where you can get around the right side of Point B in Volskaya, where normally only a Reaper, Tracer, Genji could get over there, but Soldier can actually Helix rocket and then walk along the edge and get over there. So you can look that up or get creative with it and play around, but it's good to know that the Helix rocket can be used to propel you.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because that's actually a tactic used by some Zarya players as well. Her alternate fire does have the capability to launch you in the air in tandem with your jump if you time it correctly.
Right, yeah.
Super
same
advanced
idea.
technique, yeah. But it could be useful, being able to get up to a higher area instead of walking all the way around or depending on another teammate to get you up there via maze wall or any other sort of situation. It's helpful. Every little bit counts. So anything you can do to utilize your ability to their fullest potential is going to be awesome. And Soldier has just some great abilities. He's just an amazing character. I mean, it makes sense that he once led Overwatch because it seems like he has everything. So don't take him lightly.
One last thing I wanted to add really quick. When you use your ultimate, the visor, it will auto-reload. You'll instantly have full ammo.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
So good to know. And, if you're planning on using it, but you're engaged in a firefight, it's usually most effective or most efficient to use it when you're about to run out of ammo and have to reload anyway.
So that was our breakdown of Soldier 76, one of my favorite characters in Overwatch. Try him out if you haven't. He's flexible, he's got a lot of power and speed, and if you're looking for a character who can do just a little bit of everything, he's the man for the job.
A single death can change everything.
So this next character, for me personally, is the bane of my existence in Overwatch. Widowmaker is your sniper in Overwatch, and damn, she is a good one. She can take down opponents in a single shot from pretty much almost anywhere on the map as long as she can see you. She is a solid long-range character and definitely a welcome addition to any team.
Yeah, Widow is your traditional FPS sniper with a little bit of a twist with some of her abilities, but definitely the main functionality is going to be familiar to a lot of people. I think it's something we've talked about quite a bit here, that there's been some nerfs that came down recently, and she was the one that arguably got hit the hardest, not only having her damage reduced and her ultimate come up less often, but there seems to be a lot of malcontent around the removal of her quickscope trick ability. So that definitely seems to be a bigger deal than the damage nerf from what I've read and experienced. And, I mean, I think for the most part people agree there was a problem. The damage nerf was appropriate, I think. But the quickscope trick, they talked about it. They felt like it shouldn't be something that people are required to do or to learn in order to play her properly. But now that it's been removed, it seems like people are just not a fan of how she plays, not necessarily the damage, because she's still very effective. But people say she feels clunky or slow or, it's just kind of boring. You just sit there scoped in all day, whereas before you saw all these crazy acrobatic highlight plays. So I'm not sure what they'll do there. I mean, I doubt they'll add the quickscoping back in because, it was very intentionally taken out. But I wonder if they might try and do something else to kind of address this perception problem that she's not fun to play anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's definitely a distinction between your very high-level players and your more casual. And I feel like a lot of the more casual players, which I would argue are probably the majority of people playing the game, aren't utilizing a lot of these super advanced techniques. However, when these changes come across, they come across the board. So it affects everybody. And I think it's a real challenge to be able to balance a game and keep it fun while still keeping it enjoyable on both a professional and casual level. To kind of put all of this in perspective, let's go ahead and talk about her basic kit and her abilities as well, because she has some great abilities that are useful in a number of scenarios. So she has a base HP of 200, so pretty standard for your attack character. Higher than Tracer and equal to Soldier 76 for HP. And her main attacking weapon is the Widow's Kiss, which is the rifle that she uses. And it has two different modes. So your main fire is your assault fire. And if you're playing Widow, you're really only using this at close range. It is a automatic rifle, and it shoots, it has up to 30 max ammo. It does about 13 damage, and it fires 10 rounds per second. So nothing to do backflips over, but it's pretty solid as an assault rifle just for defense. And it has a reload of 1.5 seconds as well. And headshots do count, so definitely still aim for their head with that. But what you're really going to be using for the most part as Widow is your alternate fire, which is the sniper mode of the Widow's Kiss. Now, the way this works, you hold the alternate fire and it zooms in to the rifle scope, and then once you're in the scope, you can then, while holding the zoom button, hit your main fire button to do your sniper rifle shots. So it's pretty standard sniper rifle activity compared to other FPSs. But the gun changes quite a bit because it goes from that measly 13 damage to a max of 120 damage when you're firing from the sniper mode. And obviously with the zoom in as well and headshots, you can do pretty ridiculous damage with it. But you only fire one shot at a time, and each shot uses 3 of your max 30 ammo on the Widow's Kiss.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool weapon. I think the regular fire, the assault rifle, is more effective than people realize. Maybe it's the mentality that you're playing a sniper, but you see people that rush a Widow and they just kind of panic and try and run away, and depending on who it is that's rushing you and how much health they have when they get there, you can fight people off with it. I mean, you can stand your ground, but you don't necessarily want to be using it at long range or attacking people with it. As far as the snipe, it charges in 1 second to 100%, so it gets up there pretty quickly. It puts out some serious damage. As you mentioned, it does headshot, and the modifier was actually increased when her base damage got nerfed on it, so that still does 300 total damage because it's a 250% modifier for headshots. So definitely, more than anyone else, Widowmaker is going to reward headshots. That also means that depending on who you're fighting, you don't need a fully charged shot to kill them if you're going to headshot them. So be aware of that. If you're dueling another Widow, for example, they only have 200 health. You don't need to do 300 damage to kill them. So if you're going to headshot them, you can use a less than fully charged shot and get the job done. Also, there is a character-specific setting that you can use if you'd like, where when you right-click to zoom in, it'll stay zoomed in. You don't have to hold it down. So if you're more comfortable with that, it is an option for you. But overall, I think she is really powerful in the right hands. She's a character that I definitely have to practice with and warm up with before I play her, because she's all about feel, more so than anyone else. And I think that if you're having a bad day, it's going to show on a Widow more than anyone else.
I'm actually glad that you brought up the zoom-in option that you can change. Not every character, but a lot of the Overwatch characters have some character-specific options where if you go in the options and then hit the Control tab and you look on the top right, it says All Heroes. You can actually pick by the hero, and most of the heroes will have a specific option, whether it be turning on ally HP bars or the zoom option with Widow. So definitely give that an exploration. You can even change the color of the reticle. You have a few options there as well, and that could help you kind of customize the character to your preference and maybe, help you play a little better depending on what your preference is. But aside from that, looking at her other abilities, when we're looking at Widowmaker, she actually is pretty limited when it comes to mobility. She doesn't have a double jump. She can't climb walls. She doesn't have a dash like other characters. However, she does have a grappling hook. And the grappling hook is kind of a callback to some older FPSs as well, where you can shoot this grappling hook into walls, onto the side of a cliff, and it'll actually pull her up almost Spider-Man style or Batman style up into that area. And it has a pretty decent range as well. It has a cooldown of 12 seconds, and if you miss your shot, like if you hit nothing with the grapple hook, it actually will not trigger the cooldown, so you can actually try it again, which I thought was a pretty good move on Blizzard's part.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool and versatile ability, and I agree it's probably a good call that it doesn't use the cooldown if you miss, because that would be a pretty harsh penalty, I think. But yeah, it's really important. It helps with positioning before and during combat, and it's really an effective escape tool as well. If you need to fall back or if things are going south, you can get yourself out of a pinch with the grappling hook. I think people most commonly will use it to get up to ledges and things like that, but you can just aim it in the middle of a wall if you just need to get from one side of a control point to the other to escape danger or get to your team or something.
Yeah, that's important to mention. Using the hook as an evasive tool, just, hitting the walls, it's not all about vertical movement. You can use it horizontally as well. And even though the 12-second cooldown may seem like a long time, it's pretty good window of time to be able to pop off a few shots and then keep on moving with that grappling hook, maybe to another spot. The biggest mistake I think a lot of Widows make is that they will start attacking from a certain sniper point, and they'll just stay there. And then they get killed immediately afterwards. You got to think about it from the perspective of your opponent as well. If you snipe someone and get a headshot, they're looking at that kill cam most likely, and they see exactly where you are. So the best thing to do is to pop off a few shots, kill a few people, and then hook yourself somewhere else, maybe to another better vantage point, so you can kind of get them while they're trying to ambush you in your original point. So that's the grappling hook. Her other ability is the Venom Mine. Now, I think this is a great ability to pair with Widowmaker's playstyle, because the Venom Mine is actually a explosive that you can stick onto any surface, so the floor, the wall, ceilings, anything that's flat, you can stick the Venom Mine right on there. And it's a proximity mine that will actually go off when somebody walks past it and then poison them, doing up to a total of 75 damage to anybody who gets hit, just ongoing taking damage up to 75. It lasts about 5 seconds once it does go off, and it has a range of about 3 meters once triggered. So it's not going to do a whole lot of damage, but the biggest thing is that it's going to reveal the position of someone who might be trying to flank you as Widowmaker.
Yeah, it's really effective acting as a sentry, kind of like we talked about with Junkrat's Trap. It's the same idea. So you can put it to cover a flank, and then whether it activates or whether it's destroyed, you're going to get a warning on your UI. So you know, okay, I put that in that doorway, and now there's someone over there. I need to address that. Whether addressing that means going to attack them or moving to a different sniper point to get more distance, I mean, you can kind of play it by ear, but it's just really good to have that information. It's pretty cool. To my knowledge, it's the only damage over time ability in the game right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see future characters that may employ similar tactics, but for now, it's the only one that I'm aware of. And 75 damage isn't a ton, but one of your most common flanking characters that's going to be coming at you is a Tracer, so that's half of her health. More often than not, Tracer is going to either abort and go look for a health pack or recall, and if you get Tracer rushing you that doesn't have recall ready to go, that's a fight you can win easily. So yeah, it's effective to have it down. You always want to have one down, but it doesn't have to necessarily go on your flank, because another way to use it, if you have an engagement going on in front of you and you just want to launch it, it's got some pretty good range. So you can get it out there a good bit and just throw it at a group of people that are fighting. If your teammates are engaging the other team, and it'll go off, and in a cloud you can sometimes get 2 or 3 people. They're all going to take that damage. So you can use it more offensively as well.
Yeah, my favorite part of that ability is definitely that it kind of gives you a idea of where your opponents are. The biggest problem with a sniper, I feel in a lot of other FPSs, is that you're sniping and then next thing you know you get killed because you have no idea while you're looking through the scope that somebody somehow snuck behind you in some way. So that can still happen in Overwatch, but having that extra assurance of the mine is just another way to kind of use your knowledge of the level. And this is something we're definitely going to talk about later, especially once we get to Torbjorn in a later episode. But one of the biggest things about Overwatch is that these maps are like the playgrounds for these characters. They have all different levels of play. You can, hide in wide open areas. You can hide in small areas. You can get in vantage points. So being familiar with the maps in Overwatch is extremely important. And while it is important as a sniper like Widowmaker to know what the best vantage points are, it's also going to be important to get familiar to how people can get to you. If you're creating points where people want to flank you, that's where you want to drop the mine. So it creates a kind of dynamic and interesting way to play a sniper by dropping something that's going to show the position of your opponents.
Yeah, also worth mentioning that it will stick to any surface. So we keep saying drop it, but it doesn't have to be on the ground. You can put it on walls, on ceilings. So you can really you can hide it really effectively and make it almost impossible for someone on the other team to find it and kill it without taking that damage.
Exactly. And we keep saying it because you can only have one out at a time. Even though once the cooldown's done, you could shoot it again, it will actually remove your old one. So don't think you can go around dropping these mines everywhere because it's not going to work. So that's going to bring us to her ultimate ability, which is interesting because this is the only ultimate ability from a defense character that doesn't actually do damage, but extremely useful to your entire team. It's the infrared sight. And what this does is, if you look at Widowmaker, she has this kind of cool-looking recon visor on her head that, represents the Black Widow spider that she kind of represents with her character. It has multiple lenses all over it. And the purpose of this infrared sight is it'll actually let you see through walls across the entire level, and you'll be able to see the positioning of every single enemy via a red outline of their character on your HUD. This is a cool ability as a sniper because you can actually use it to kind of predict when people are going to come around corners, and just being able to see through walls alone is good. But on top of that, it actually affects your entire team. So it lasts 15.5 seconds, and your entire team can see the position of every single enemy on the map. And that is huge when working together and trying to coordinate.
Yeah, this is one of the cooler ultimates in the game, I think, because it's very unique. Definitely the ultimate team ability, I would say. I mean, it's obviously not going to get you the big group kills that you see, and so it can be hard to quantify, I think, the value of it. You see Tracer or Reaper go and use their ult and get 3 kills, and you know exactly what that ult did. With the Infrasight, it's hard to say because your teammates are all getting this benefit, so who knows how many of these kills they wouldn't have gotten without it. But there's no question that it is extremely helpful, and it gives your team a huge advantage while it's up. Because of that, it's actually one of the only ultimates, along with maybe Torbjorn's if his turret's still up, but there's value in using it even if you're not in the fight. Like, if you just died and you know your team's getting rushed on a point, or your team is in trouble, you can use the ultimate from spawn while you're running back, and it's not going to help you personally, but if it gives your other 5 teammates the ability to see through walls, I mean, that could very well be the difference in the fight. So you don't always wait until you're back in the fight to use it. I mean, if your team's getting wiped out, you can save them by using it from far away.
Yeah, that's definitely huge. Also, this is very specific, but putting the infrared sight on will actually help you locate Symmetra's teleporter more easily, which is huge because there's definitely an audio cue when Symmetra puts down a teleporter, and as we mentioned in a previous episode, the teleporter is a ridiculous ability because it absolutely cuts down the travel time of your entire team and gets them back into the action quicker. So if you're fighting an opposing Symmetra, taking out a teleporter should definitely be one of your top priorities, and the infrared sight is going to be another great way to do this. So when you're playing Widowmaker, strategically, what characters are you aiming for, and who are you trying to avoid when you're out in the battlefield?
Well, I'd say Widow, she can be a frustrating character at times because she can engage at her full potential from so far away. You almost feel like everyone that you're missing should be dead. So it can be frustrating. Like, anytime you die, it's kind of your fault because you had the opportunity to kill them first, I feel like. But as far as characters that you specifically want to target, Zenyatta and Tracer are, well, I shouldn't say easy target with Tracer, but very tempting targets because they have so little health. And probably like Junkrat, McCree, Pharah, and Bastion are a few others that come to mind. Pharah especially, you want to get her out of the air because you can do it better than most anyone else in the game. Bastion, he's really dangerous from medium range, but he starts to have a lot of damage fall off, so you can usually pop out and engage him and clear a Bastion for your team. And then Junkrat, again, same kind of premise. He's great for medium range, but it's hard to get those grenades out quickly, so you can usually pick them off pretty fast. As far as characters that Widow's weak against, I would say the characters that can get to her quickly. So, like, Genji and Tracer are a headache if they get the advantage and can dictate the situation. I think the hard counter to Widow is probably Winston, just because even if you headshot him, he can leap and get up to you and shield and at the very least force you off your position. That's the best case scenario, I think, is for Widow to just get away with her grappling hook because he's got more health than you can take out usually. And kind of Diva, because I think that she's pretty similar playstyle to Winston, so same premise. I mean, she can get up to you before you can take her out. Even though Diva has a huge headshot hitbox, it's still going to be tough before she gets up there. So those are the ones that can kind of at least force you to change position, but Genji and Tracer are probably going to stay on you, so they can be a real headache.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorite things to do as a, Winston player is... No. My favorite thing to do as a Winston player is kill Widowmakers by far, just chasing them down. He's a great counter to Widowmaker. But when playing Widowmaker, yeah, I agree with you. I think the key for Widowmaker as far as characters to take down is low HP, low mobility. Characters like McCree, Mercy, Bastion, even though his HP is not super low, but he doesn't have a whole lot of mobility, especially when in turret form. So you want to hit the characters that are going to either move slowly or not move at all, kind of post themselves up somewhere, and really utilize that ability to get that full 100% sniping power out of her scope shot. It's going to be extremely damaging, and it's going to force people to move. And at the very least, if you're not killing people, you're making them aware of your presence, and you're making them afraid to move where they normally would, and having them shift their strategy around. In a lot of games, like your payload maps or control points, regardless of the game mode, hindering someone from moving into a certain area of the map that they want to is only going to prolong them getting to their goal, and therefore ticking down that timer and helping you win the game on defense. And also, when attacking, just taking out those characters and making them less of a threat to your teammates. So it's a very straightforward way to play with her, but I think a lot of the strategy comes from picking your targets and deciding who to take out first.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely something where you've got to prioritize targets. I mean, you're not going to be able to take tanks out that quickly, but you can really affect the match by taking out healers first, or characters that are already low on health or have low HP. So yeah, don't just shoot for the first red character you see. I mean, you got to make sure that before you give away your position that it's worth it.
So that's Widowmaker, the French sniper. Just be aware of the level around you, be aware of who you're fighting, where they're coming from, if they're flanking, and if you're fighting Widowmaker, please, please, please get rid of her. She is the bane of my existence, and I will play Winston every time to absolutely remove her from the scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. I switch to Winston every single time I'm getting owned by a Widow. He's your best option for sure.
I love it. I think we should do just a Winston killing Widowmaker episode of this podcast.
We could include video for that one. That would be great.
I got plenty.
So a few other tips that I've picked up. The number one thing I mentioned earlier, this character more than anyone else is about feel. And she's going to be a real test of your Twitch gaming skills. So if there's one character that I would say I practice regularly, it's Widow. I'm talking going into the training ground, just riding around the conveyor belt and getting as many headshots as you can in each lap. Or, going into quick play now that's a little bit less competitive, and trying her in different situations. There's actually a cool flash shooting mini game that we can attach the link to that'll help you practice your aim as well if you really want to try and get excellent with Widow. But yeah, she's all about feel. Another thing, the grappling hook, we mentioned that it'll propel you or it'll pull you to whatever you attach to. But if you hook it to an edge and you hit the jump button right before you get to that edge, it'll actually launch you into the air on your current trajectory. So that's how, if you've seen some of the highlight Widow plays where they get these aerial snipes, that's how they're doing it. If you hit that jump button right before you get to the edge, it'll launch you straight up in the air or whatever angle you're going at. So you can use that to get away or to go for some sweet aerial snipes, although that's a little bit harder since they got the quick scope out of there. But yeah, and then you mentioned, but really important, so you can't say it enough, teleporters. Infrasight is going to let you see teleporters. It is the best way. Look for it, call it out to your teammates. You got to get those out of there, and it's the only way to know for sure where they are without actually stumbling across it.
For sure. And then on the note that you brought, I'm actually glad you brought it up, using the grappling hook and jumping right before you get to the edge to launch yourself. Super cool ability. Great way to kind of practice your platforming with Widow. But the key word there is right before. you hit it. If you hit jump before, like too early before, it actually cancels the grapple hook, and then you're going to have to wait the full cooldown before you can use it again. And there's nothing more infuriating playing as Widow than using a grapple hook that not only didn't get you where you needed to be, but now you have to wait another 12 seconds before you can use it again. So just kind of be aware of that as well. So guys, thank you so much again for listening. That was our character breakdown on both Soldier 76 and Widowmaker. Definitely two powerhouses of the Overwatch cast, and huge in the lore and the story, and they are just a lot of fun to play, and definitely take a little more skill. These are your traditional Twitch characters, so you're gonna want to practice your aim, and especially with Widow, it's gonna be extremely important. It takes patience. It really takes just going out there, losing a few matches, and maybe even more than a few. But the only way to get there is to repeatedly play as these characters. As we've mentioned in a few episodes previous, Soldier 76 and Widow both have kits that are very, very traditional to FPS. So if you're not used to FPS, it's going to take a little time because there's a lot of people jumping in the game who may even be playing Overwatch, for their first week or the first time, and instantly good with these characters because they've been playing Counter-Strike, they've been playing Call of Duty, Battlefield. These are all the same type of characters. However, Overwatch has their own flavor on the sniper and assault rifle type characters, and they are a lot of fun to play. So try them out, and if you guys have any other strategies, maybe some tips and tricks that you like to use in your matches that we didn't cover, then feel free to reach out to us and let us know. We love when you guys give us your feedback. You can reach us a few different ways. You can reach us via Twitter. I'm at HappyJamOP. And Jeff?
I'm at TruthiterOP.
And you can also reach me via email as well, happyjamop@gmail.com. If you have any feedback, any requests, other tips and tricks, once we go through all the character breakdowns, we are actually going to start covering some more general strategy, some advanced strategy, and then other fun things that Overwatch has, such as sound design, map design, character pairings. But if you have any ideas or anything that you'd like us to talk about or cover, please feel free to contact us and let us know. That has been our character breakdown on Soldier 76 and Widowmaker. Thank you guys a lot for listening, and we really look forward to talking to you next time.